Huge numbers of Ethiopian refugees have fled a government offensive in the dissident Tigray region, overcrowding the Refugee reception camp in neighbouring Sudan. Many are scrambling to find shelter and food.
We don't have any blankets or mattresses and no water and no food. We feel as if we're just living in the bush here. Our country was secure. We left our homes, our cows and our food. It's all been taken by those fighting and we have nothing here. We're very hungry and we don't have a choice.
More than 45,000 people have left northern Ethiopia since November 4th, after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed ordered military operations against the region's ruling Tigray People's Liberation Front in response to alleged attacks on federal army camps. The party, which opposes the federal government, has denied the accusation. Elsewhere, in Sudan's Hashaba refugee camp, Ethiopian doctors who fled the fighting themselves are giving free treatment to other refugees from Tigray. Nearly 16,000 people live here.
We have enough health professionals, but some problems have happened for us. We don't have a shelter, we don't have a bedroom. We sleep on the ground only, the health professionals. So it's difficult, and we have no salary. We are giving a free service. So it's difficult to live here. It is a challenge.
After initially blocking humanitarian access to Tigray, Ethiopia's government has allowed United Nations workers to deliver aid. The government announced it controls the region, but the UN says ongoing sporadic fighting is hampering its work. Boko Haram fighters killed at least 76 farm workers in rice fields near the northeast Nigerian city of Maiduguri. The victims were labourers from Sokoto state in northwest Nigeria, roughly 1,000 kilometres away, who had travelled to the northeast to find work. The dead were buried in a mass funeral.
Ever since we started this work, we've encountered few challenges, but now we're living through such an awful moment that has never happened to us. Here are 43 dead bodies that have been buried, and you saw it with your own eyes. Even now, there are bodies that are yet to be recovered from the bush. It is a frightening situation.
Jihadist group Boko Haram claimed responsibility for the attack, which it said was revenge after villagers seized fighters and handed them over to authorities. At least 36,000 people have been killed in the jihadist conflict, which has displaced around 2 million since 2009. Boko Haram have increasingly targeted loggers, herders and fishermen in their violent campaign, accusing them of spying and passing information to the military and the local militia fighting them. Such violence has also spread into neighbouring Niger, Chad and Cameroon, prompting the deployment of a regional military coalition. People are eating dirt in the south of Madagascar as famine threatens amid a severe drought on the Indian Ocean island. Here, locals are mixing white clay with tamarind to fill their bellies. Cactus fruit is the staple in the arid region, but after more than a year without rain, even the hardy plants have stopped producing fruit. Several people have died of hunger.
My children didn't eat for 3 days and then died because I, their mother, did not manage to feed them. I'm sure it was the famine that killed them. It wasn't something else. It's not the disease, but famine. I left early in the morning and came back in the evening, and I saw the body of my child with his eyes open.
The World Food Programme, this year's Nobel Peace Laureate, says $37.6 million are urgently needed to feed the hungry. Around 1.5 million people, half the local population, need emergency food aid. Droughts aren't uncommon here, but the continued dry spell has been compounded by climate impact. Traditional canoe racing is making a comeback in the Central African Republic. Keen sportsmen from different ethnic tribes compete in the races to mark festivities at the beginning of December. For years, citizens have been deprived of the much-loved spectacle as civil war raged in their country. 2/3 of the former French colony remains under the control of rebel groups. But the capital Bangui remains relatively untouched by violence since a peace accord between the government and armed groups last year.
With everything that had been taking place in the Central African Republic, it had all stopped. It is from 2017 that we started it up again. In the Central African Republic, the canoe race is very important. There are two kinds of canoes, the one where you stand and the one where you sit.
The government is encouraging participation by awarding each of the teams around $90. And as for the winners, they take home $1,800, a small fortune in one of the world's poorest countries.
The Senegalese port city of Mbour is one of the main points of departure for migrant boats bound for the Canary Islands. In recent years, an increase in clandestine migration has led to countless tragedies at sea. These two brothers barely escaped with their lives in October when their boat caught fire. They say there were more than 200 people on board. Only 51 survived.
The fire wasn't that strong yet when a petrol tank exploded. I left my bags and jumped into the sea. Some people who didn't know how to swim grabbed onto me. We swam and all around us people were drowning. It was awful. We carried on swimming like that. If God decides it's not your time, you survive.
Over 18,000 migrants have landed on the shores of the Canary Islands this year, according to the International Organization for Migration. The coronavirus pandemic is partly to blame. It has worsened existing poverty that drives locals to leave in search of opportunities elsewhere. But for many Senegalese people living off the sea, the issues are more deep-rooted. They say fish stocks have dropped, forcing them to go further out to sea for a good haul. They blame Asian trawlers and the allocation of fishing licenses to European vessels.
We go fishing, and when we come back, what we earn barely covers what we had to spend. There's nothing for us here, and that's why we prefer to leave it all behind. It's the only way to help our parents and our families.
Khalifa's mother paid a smuggler 400,000 CFA francs, the equivalent of $730 or €600, to arrange his crossing. It was a small fortune for the family, but the vessel had to abort its voyage and dock in neighbouring Mauritania when fuel and food ran out. Their large investment came to nothing. It's a common experience. Many migrants fall victim to the greed of traffickers who dangerously overload vessels in search of profit. Mustafa Fowl works for an organisation that tries to discourage young people from taking the perilous trip.
We've counted over 480 deaths. Just think, young people in the prime of their lives, who should have been building their lives, helping their parents, living. But just like that, they've wasted their lives. They've bartered them away.
The Senegalese government, initially slow to respond, now says it is putting measures in place to stop the trend.
The President asked us to come up with an urgent measure, and that's what we've done. Teams have been on the ground for 10 days here in Mbour, in Saint-Louis, or in the south, trying to work out how many have left, how many have survived, and how many are preparing to go. The state is also putting measures in place to dissuade young people from leaving, most importantly stopping the traffickers, because, let's face it, they're criminals, and we need to treat them as such.
The government also says it plans to boost its vocational retraining programs to help the Senegalese youth build a life in their home country. But despite the high risk of death, many still cling to the ideal that a brighter future lies across the water.